Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you work your A game. A made no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This isn't A game, better bring your A game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you work your A game. A made no rain from the track when we unite.
Hey, now it's the Mike and JD show, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm joined as always by JD by God Oliva. How you doing, JD?
Yeah, ups and downs. I'll tell you something. Last night's episode was absolutely freaking incredible. Like, I'm sitting there, right? And I'm kind of, the TV's kind of sucked lately, right? So I'm like looking forward to this episode a lot because our good buddy Jeremy Feinstone texts me and he's like, you need to watch this. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm in. So he got it before I did. And then I'm excited because, people have been building this up for a little while, right? And I'm really excited about this episode, right? So I'm in there and I'm like, I've texted Jeremy, like, oh, wow, look, this is going great. What a good start. He's like, trust me, you get to the end, it's going to be unbelievable. So we get to the end of the episode and I'm just absolutely floored. I could not believe what I had witnessed. Like, this is my favorite show on TV right now. And there's not even a close second. Like, I was stunned. I was floored. It might be the best television program that I personally have watched in 2024. Like, I freaking love it. There's not a better show on TV. Yes.
JD.
What?
Are you talking about Dynamite?
No, Dynamite was fucking terrible this week. No, I'm talking about X-Men 97. Like,
okay, yeah.
No, why would I talk about Dynamite? Dynamite is freaking awful. That was one of the worst wastes of time in my life. No, after Dynamite was over, I was like, this shit's fucking awful. I'm going to go watch X-Men 97. Because Jeremy recommended, he goes like, you probably want to skip Dynamite and go right to X-Men. And I'm like, I can't do that. I got to watch Dynamite first. Boy, was he right. I should have just skipped right over Dynamite and went right to X-Men 97. However, X-Men 97, actually, I meant what I said about X-Men 97. Dynamite, on the other hand, ugh.
Yeah. So I watched Dynamite last night because I love a good like train wreck. You know what I mean? Like, not like a literal train wreck, but I like dumpster fires. And so I went ahead and I watched that instead of watching X-Men 97 last night, and I was upset with myself. And then I got up at 4 o'clock. Then I got up at 4 o'clock this morning, and I'm already like irritated. Got up at 4 a.m. I had a really good workout. I think I went like 70 minutes on my workout. I burned over 500 active calories, just killing it. But I woke up at 4 a.m. and then I forgot to eat breakfast. And then I get to work.
Oh, that's not nice.
And then 9:30 rolls around. I'm fucking cranky. I end up leaving. I go grab some breakfast from the grocery store and I come back and I'm like just dragging ass. So I was like, screw it. My boss was gone. I didn't have a meeting until like 2 p.m. Wife and kid were off doing something else during my lunch break. So I came home and I watched X-Men 97 and goddamn, that was a good episode of TV.
Dude, it's unbelievable. Like, it's like they're cobbling little bits of like all the best X-Men stuff from over the years from after the TV show ended. and
Yeah.
it's like the stuff of great fiction. Like the characters are understandable and relatable, unlike All Elite Wrestling, and plots make sense and are going
Yeah.
somewhere, unlike All Elite Wrestling. And then half the cast is dead by the end of the episode. Unfortunately, not like All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah. So I watched that, and then at the end of the episode, I was like, "This is incredible."
Ugh.
But there was a lot of stuff that I didn't personally understand because I'm kind of like I have
Yeah,
not
fair.
watched anything in like X-Men, like I haven't watched any of the cartoons since I was like a little kid, right? So now I have to go back and watch the original series, and I'm kind of excited about it. That way I can kind of understand more of what's going on. That said, just because I didn't quite grasp everything, that didn't mean it wasn't an incredible episode. It fucking ruled. At the end of it, I was like, what the hell just happened? And I don't want to get into spoilers because it just came out yesterday. So I think everybody, if you have a Disney Plus account, you need to go ahead and check that out. But yeah,
It's
it was awesome. It totally made up for the stinkeroo from last night.
it's like the best X-Men adaptation ever done, right? Movies, TV, everything. This is single episode, and it's gutsy. Like I can't believe that Disney greenlit this, right? Because the writer actually went out and did a thing on Twitter, like saying this is how I pitched the show to them, and I can't believe Disney said yes, we will do that. But I'm really glad they did because fuck, is it a good show?
Yeah. All right, guys. I see everybody in the chat, and I will get to you guys in a little bit. But
Ugh.
JD and I are going to go ham on this AEW story from last night. And then we're going to follow that up with my infamous, I've told this story a couple times, but if you haven't heard it, my infamous Akebono story, because rest in peace, Akebono. But I actually had an altercation with Akebono around 20 years ago in 2006, 2007 timeframe. My memory is a little foggy on the time. But and JD, you saw it on Facebook, right? So you can back me up. I had 3 people corroborate my story, right?
Can confirm, and I've heard you tell this story now on multiple occasions on multiple different platforms. So, and it's always been consistent. So, I can say that this is nobody would make this shit up, man. Like nobody. This is Mike Gilbert through and through.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit of Akebono, obviously. Rest in peace. And if you're coming here thinking I'm going to bury not I in fact, when I told the story, I never once buried the guy, so that's not what's going to happen. So I'm not that kind of guy. I don't do that to people. So so yeah, let's go ahead and so first I got to remember my plugs. Patreon.com/The Mike and JD Show. Coming up this Sunday night, join JD, By God, Oliva, and myself as we watch They Live. It's finally happening. I had to postpone a week because I actually had family plans last Sunday.
It's my birthday.
My wife and kid were like,
I know.
They're like, oh, we planned on spending time with you. I was like, so what they did is they actually we spent the whole day at the beach, and then we came back and we made a really nice dinner, and they sat and watched WrestleMania with me. And I'm like, they don't watch wrestling with me. You know what I mean? So they're like, it's your day. We're going to watch WrestleMania with you. And I was like, okay, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's all. I think they wanted to go out to eat dinner, but I'm like, look, the best barbecue on Oahu is in my backyard. So let's just make food in the backyard. Let's just do that and then eat at home. So that's what we did. So this coming up Sunday, we're going to watch They Live, starring Roddy Piper, of course, directed by the great John Carpenter, one of JD's favorites. JD, are you going to do a JD Oliva project talking about your love of John Carpenter? You've been saying it.
I know. I'm a busy person. And now that you're calling me out on the spot, I guess I have no choice now. Yeah, I'm going to do that. It'll be an accompanying piece to go with it. I'll probably lay it down tomorrow or Saturday, and watch it, because I'm just going to talk about how John Carpenter got to They Live, right? Because They Live is without a doubt his most anti-capitalistic, anti-80s film, and it takes him a while to get here. Like, this movie is his rejection of what had happened to him in the 10 years leading up to it. So I'm excited, man. I love this movie. I think this is stuff we could do more frequently, because there's a lot of wrestling movies and most of them suck.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'll pop the link in Patreon, and you guys can just click the link if you're a Patreon subscriber, and you'll just be in the green room or on the show with JD and myself, and we'll all watch the movie together on our computer screens as a family.
So I put this on my Facebook story this week that you and I were going to watch. Actually, last week we were going to watch it, and I had a girl from high school reach out to me and say, "Oh, I watched this movie recently. How are you guys going to do this? Explain this process to me." And I was like, well, this is not a conversation I ever expected to have with like a normal person. So it was kind of cool. Like we might get some stragglers checking this out with us. So I'm pretty pumped.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool. Everybody join us, and it's only going to happen on Patreon live because we can't use the footage. Obviously, we're not going to just put up a whole movie on Patreon. We'll I've done some pretty dangerous stuff, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to nuke the whole deal. And if you guys want to hop in at any moment, interrupt JD and I as we're talking, feel free to lay down a super chat. But if you don't got the $2, that's cool. Just wait till later because once we're done talking our top stories, JD and I are going to get to the chat and we'll answer all your questions and hit all the topics, get to your comments like we do each and every week. So, and we really appreciate the collaboration with you guys because that really does help the show move along. So, and you guys are a big part of that. So we really appreciate you here. Even King of the North, we even like him. We even like King of the North. So
we're not. Can they send super chats now? Are we good? Are we set up for that now?
Yeah. All they have to they hit the super chat button. Yeah.
Please. We like super chats would be cool. So we're
and even if either feed, Voices of Wrestling or our feed, where we co-stream on both networks. So whichever feed you guys are on, feel free to send a super chat. And if you send it to Voices of Wrestling, maybe Joe and Rich will give us a raise. Hopefully,
that'd be nice. That would be nice.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's get into it, man. Because I
have to.
I know I do, but I have a lot of thoughts about it, and I honestly was pretty pumped up. Like last night, I wanted to talk about it, but I was like, no, we got to wait for the show. But I want to hear your thoughts first. So, because I am the host, so I'll pitch to you first. So, AEW shows the all-in fight footage, and you and I have been texting all day. Fights, yes, fight in quotations, right? Between CM Punk and Jungle Boy backstage. And you and I were kind of hoping that it was going to be the lamest shit ever. And we prayed for it, and God answered our prayers. Boy, was this a shit show. It
was worse than I expected. It really was. Like, so this is kind of where I came to on this, right? It was a whole lot of nothing, I thought.
Yeah.
I do think so. I think this thing, when you look at this, it's a Rorschach test, right? Like, it's one of those ink blot tests. People don't know what that actual term means. It's you see what you want to see. So if you're a pro Punk guy, you're going to see everything go, CM Punk was right. He just like Jack Perry deserved all that. If you're an anti-Punk guy, you're going to look and go, what a dick. He took the first punch. He waited till Jack Perry's hands were in his hair to do anything. And then he went after Tony Khan, which you can kind of see him going after Tony Khan in that. So whatever you want to see, you saw. It verified everything you already thought about all this beforehand. And it was a colossal waste of time. It did nothing to further anything for this promotion. It actually took them a couple steps backwards. And I feel worse about being an AEW fan at this moment than I felt 1 week ago. I think we took a lot of positive shows and flushed them away for nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree because I feel like if you remove that segment, I thought Dynamite was like pretty decent, but after that segment airs, I felt like they just kind of let the air out of the show.
100%
for me because I was too busy I was like too distracted, like looking up memes.
Me too.
And telling jokes about the situation, right? Because they made a joke of themselves, and I get it that they were trying to turn it back into a storyline. But it's the most convoluted, like bass-ackwards thing you can do with the Young Bucks being heels. And in this situation, the CM Punk is like the heel in like real life, right? But the Young Bucks are heels on television, and they're presenting their heel CM Punk and saying this is, him pushing Jack Perry and getting him in like a front face lock when it looked like Jack was trying to. You're the wrestling coach. Did it kind of seem like he was like an attempt at like a double leg or something like that? He just kind of bent over and kind of went after him a little bit. I know CM Punk pulled his head down a little bit, but it kind of looked like Perry went for like a god awful double leg.
As a man who's spent his entire life dedicated to the sport of amateur wrestling, that was the worst display of wrestling I've ever seen between two adult men.
Yes. I totally agree. So, and the whole thing is, okay, Punk pushes him again. Perry comes at him. He gets him into like a face lock. And then Joe just picks up Perry, and Chris Hero, pulls Chris Hero. And I think Jerry Lynn pulls CM Punk away. And then CM Punk goes over to Tony Khan, or actually he throws a punch at this point. So he does throw a punch towards Perry. I don't think it actually hit Perry. And I don't think anybody's ever reported that Perry got hit with a punch, but a punch was thrown. It missed. CM Punk not known for great punches, but and then he goes over and he kind of like shouts, and that's probably where he's telling Tony Khan that he's a fucking clown, right? And shouts, knocks over his monitor, and that put the fear of God into Tony, poor guy. And then that was the whole thing. So I have multiple problems with this. I think it was, like you said, a waste of time. I don't think it furthered the storyline. In fact, I think it made the storyline worse. I'm like less interested in the match now.
Yes.
I'm more and not only that, like they did this on the context of the show, right? Like on the context of the show. And just minutes before that, we got Swerve beating down Samoa Joe before his match, and like they go through a table and this and that. And so in the context of the show, this little miniature, so that's the fake part, but now we're going to go to the real part when in reality, like it was just a couple of shoves, a punch that didn't land, and half-ass choke. They got a guy fired, but we just saw Swerve like fucking attack Samoa Joe before the bell during his entrance. You know what I mean? So it's like in the context of the show, it just made no sense to even have it on the show.
No.
I think they regret their decision because of all the backlash and how badly they're being made fun of. They pulled the footage from everybody that had it. To where I actually had to go like old school and screen record it, so I have it on my phone just in case anybody needs it. I got it. But and like they put the Young Bucks footage on YouTube, but they cut out the backstage brawl footage because you can tell that they're clearly embarrassed by what they had just put on television. It was a colossal mistake. It was a disaster. They've been ridiculed for 24 hours now, and I hope they learn their mistake. Now, is this a death knell for AEW? Of course not. It's a couple of steps back. They'll put on a couple of bangers. Dynasty's going to fucking rule, and they'll be back in no time. It's not going to be a big issue.
No.
I don't put any stock into last night's ratings. I don't think that's a success. I think that was a 1 week bump because they used an embarrassingly bad promotional tactic to cause everybody to come show up. They embarrass themselves, and I don't think that's going to lead to business next week. I could be wrong. I don't think it's going to. So for them to be excited about it and Tony Khan to be excited about it, take credit for CM Punk popping a rating. CM Punk and Sheldon from Big Bang Theory popping him some good ratings last night. I don't think he's got anything to be proud about there. So that and on top of that, we talked about it last week. Edge's promo from last week. Now it didn't hit with me because I didn't feel like it was necessary. Boy, in hindsight, he probably shouldn't have cut the promo because they just cut his fucking legs right under him by coming out and bringing it up again after last week they sent him out. I don't know if it was his idea or Tony's. I'm assuming it was his, but Tony's signed off on it. Clearly, they're not going to do it without like telling him. So he goes out there and talks about how we're going to stay out of the negative. We're going to, move on. I love pro wrestling. He puts over Cody, puts over everybody. Happy, joyous, and free. We're going into there. We're not even going to touch the subject. But fucking Tony and the Young Bucks, they just could not help themselves. They had to dig it back up, and they had to show the footage, and they only made themselves look worse. Now, as far as the footage goes, all it showed was that Punk is an aggressive asshole who is the hero of his own story, and while it wasn't completely accurate, like Tony, he obviously lunged at Tony, he obviously threw a punch, and he was the aggressor in the situation, but it wasn't like dramatically different than the story he told. There were some slight differences, which when you're in a altercation, you're telling it from your perspective. That's probably what he thought happened in his head. Now looking back on the footage, like, oh fuck yeah, maybe I was the aggressor, like one of those things. But he is an asshole, and he's a bit of a bullshit artist. And I think we already knew that part about him. You know what I mean? So they didn't do anything to own Punk. In fact, they only owned themselves. This was an own goal right out of soccer.
This is stupid, right?
Yes.
I don't even know if you can blame the Bucks on this. I'm pretty sure from what I gathered, this was all Tony. Tony really felt motivated by this, unless you know something I don't know.
Wade Keller said that. Wade Keller said this was all Tony.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sean Ross Sapp said something different, like that the Young Bucks were okay with it. So
being okay is not the same as it not being your idea,
But it's Tony's promotion. He's in charge of everything. So the success falls on him and the failures fall on him. This is on him. It's absolutely on him.
We've seen this before with Tony, where he gets embarrassed by something they've done, and he'll DCMA all the clips from it. Remember the exploding barbed wire thingamabobber, which was hilarious. And they actually wound up doing some of the best creative and best business they ever had coming out of that. So I mean,
they made fun of it, and it was great. Eddie Kingston, one of the greatest lines in Dynamite history was John Moxley saying, "Oh, you know what? I think TNA made the Dynamite. That's why it fucked up." That was great. That was great.
It was funny, and It actually was the jumpstart for Eddie Kingston's babyface turn, which has been really great for that company. So they took something, they took nothing and made it something. The problem with Tony is that like he's very thin-skinned, which again, so is Vince McMahon. Like my favorite is people like Vince McMahon never would have done this, and I'm like, I got some Huckster and Nacho Man skits that I'd like to show you guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did do stuff like this, but they won the war, so they get to rewrite history, and the goobers are going to be goobers. So, but that said, they embarrassed their promotion last night, and like, honest to God, if I wasn't so like super into doing the show with you, I think I might walk away for a little bit, because like I was right back to like October 2023 last night. I was like, this is embarrassing. This is not what I want to watch. And I really liked Adam Copeland and Penta. I thought that was a lot of fun. Adam Copeland's out there doing lucha spots, right? Totally wrestling outside of his comfort zone. Like, and there was stuff on the show. I agree. It totally derailed the show. We had two women kissing, and even that couldn't even bring me back into enjoying the show.
Yeah. Even that couldn't save it. Yeah. But definitely it derailed it. It let the air out of it. The whole thing, man.
Oh yeah.
But now you and I have not talked about this other situation that happened at Dynamite, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this. So shortly after that, Will Ospreay comes on television and he cuts a promo and he addresses the stupid shit that Triple H said about him. Well, Triple H didn't name him specifically. We all kind of figured.
We all know who he was talking about.
We all kind of figured that's who he was talking about. Did you have an issue with Ospreay kind of answering that on Dynamite last night?
No, I didn't at all. I thought Ospreay's words were awesome. I think anyone who says that's thin-skinned themselves, and like again, we grew up in the 90s, man. This happened all the time on that. And Triple H, Paul, you know how I feel about Paul Levesque. He's my least favorite human being in professional wrestling. Can't stand him. The reign of terror pushed me away from being a wrestling fan for more than a decade. I do not like him as a performer, never cared for his work, don't like what the game, like, I don't like that he made the WrestleMania main event all about him. Like, that's the most Triple H thing ever. I don't like that he had to feel the need to squash Sting in his only WrestleMania match. Like, he's an egomaniac. And for him, he's clearly bothered that Ospreay didn't go there. So for him to sit there and say that, for him to sit there and say, we want to pay less, we want to pay guys less to work more, and if you're afraid of the grind, we don't want you. I mean, like, if I hear that as a guy who worked as an independent contractor for 20 years, I'm like, kiss my ass, dude. And I would have handled it exactly the way Will Ospreay handled it. I have no problem with how Will Ospreay did it. The problem is that it came after that shitball segment they ran before. If that's all they did was Ospreay out there, because Ospreay has turned into a really good promo. Yeah. And he was being completely sophomoric and a total dick about that, which is what I think would have gotten fans super fired up. But because we had to sit through that masturbatory bullshit in the previous segment that even Tony Schiavone was having flashbacks to Vince Russo sitting there in his seat, dying in front of all of us.
Poor Tony.
Like, dude, I mean, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with what Will Ospreay said. I like that kind of stuff in pro wrestling. Like, Dave and Brian were on the show going, well, he didn't, Triple H didn't say it on the show. He said it on Pat McAfee.
He said
a major show.
He said it to a bigger audience than if he were to say it on Raw.
Thank you.
Now I get that argument. If the two companies were equal, I get that argument. Triple H saying it on like ESPN. He's not really saying it on his show. It's not in the course of his show. Will Ospreay doesn't have access to that platform.
No.
And I think I heard somebody, I can't remember who it was, might have been LeGrec or somebody that's stupid like that, said that, well, why doesn't Will Ospreay just go on to Pat McAfee and answer his critics? And I'm like, he doesn't have access. He doesn't have access to Pat McAfee. He doesn't have access to go on ESPN. Will Ospreay is not that famous, right? Not compared to Triple H, not compared to the top WWE guys. He's a guy that's still out there grinding, still making his name, that's on the come up. So of course you take shots at the leaders. That's what you do. Like Cody Rhodes, like they built AEW based on they were coming for WWE. That's the game, right? They started it. Cody Rhodes used the sledgehammer on the throne, taking shots at Triple H. That's how it works. He did it on the show because guess what? Cody Rhodes doesn't have the ability to, at the time when he was working for AEW, didn't have the ability to go on one of these big podcasts to call them out. But they did constantly on these other smaller podcasts, on the Jericho podcast. They're doing all that stuff. So Will Ospreay, this is only his only opportunity at a measurable level to be able to answer Triple H, who clearly called him out. Now, maybe he didn't say him by name, but it was still directed at him. At least that's what everybody thought. So you can't let somebody punk you like that. And I think he's a bigger babyface for it. Unfortunately, like you said, because of what had just happened right before his promo. Everybody's kind of shitting on it, unfortunately. But I found it to be a really good promo, and I thought it was worth it and necessary.
I think if Tony doesn't run on stupid footage, that's probably our lead story tonight. So I'm sorry, but I read this. You know me, I hate revisionist history. Alacron says Huckster and Nacho were way with 3 Ys different than this. How? Do you forget do you forget when Vince had a guy calling Ted Turner a lithium addict and then showed an article from the New York Post calling out the AOL Time Warner stuff with Ted Turner's picture saying, right? How is that way different than this?
It's not way different, and it sucked too. By the way, that was terrible,
and it was bad.
You know what I found? You know what else? I think a more appropriate comparison. I can't remember who said it, but I found the comparison a lot better. It was fake Razor and fake Diesel showing up on Monday Night Raw with heel JR.
That's a great one.
That's what I thought. And guess what? And that was a fart in church. It sucked. It went over. So Tony should have learned from those situations, right? He is a hardcore fan and he knows what he's doing, and he knows those situations well, and he knows how badly they bombed. He should have learned from that. He should have known.
The problem is Tony's turning into Vince a little bit. And I'm not saying he's a rapist. I'm saying that like he is himself. Yes. He is himself very wealthy. And when you've had a modicum of success, you think you know what's best. And it's your company. So all you can do is listen to your advisor telling you this is not a good idea. And I'm going to assume the guys in backstage were trying to talk sense into Tony saying this is not a good idea. You saw the look on Tony Schiavone's face. He knew right away it wasn't a bad idea. But Tony Khan believed in it until he saw it and said, that was terrible.
Yeah.
So now you got to live with it. And here's the problem. Here's what bugs me. We talk about Tony Khan leadership issues. You and I have gone off on this a lot. And part of being a leader is sticking your nose out and admitting when you fucked up, admitting when you failed. Tony is not very good at stepping out and saying, hey, man, I made a mistake and owning up to it.
Success has 1,000 fathers, but failure is an orphan, right?
Yep.
That's that old saying. That's kind of one of those things. He should be like, you know what, guys, I thought this was going to work. And Young Bucks and FTR tried their damnedest, and they did. They did. I felt like the Young Bucks performance. I thought their performance was like they make me hate them. I think that's what they're supposed to do, right? They took chicken shit and tried to turn it into chicken salad or whatever that saying is. Unfortunately, Cash Wheeler probably didn't need to be, talking in that moment. I didn't think he was very good, but Dax then goes on. Dax tried, man. He tried to be super passionate. Did the same old Dax promo we always get. Turns into the fucking Gettysburg Address at some point. He really tried. And then here's the kicker. Here's the real kicker. A couple segments later, they're brawling in the ring with the Young Bucks, and fucking CM Punk chants go off. CM Punk's supposed to be the heel in the situation, and they turned him babyface.
He beat up a freaking heel that nobody likes. And they got the heels telling him, look at this happen. Like, of course they babyface CM Punk again. Right?
Yeah.
It just, oh man, I got New Japan tickets tomorrow in Chicago. I cannot wait to hear what happens when Jack Perry comes out. Could be quite interesting. We'll have my.
He's
gonna
get shit on so bad. It's gonna be great. It's honestly, I think it's gonna be good television. Like I was gonna watch because I'm excited for Moxley and Naito. I was gonna check it out anyway, but now I'm like, okay, now I'm kind of curious as to what happens with Jack Perry in Chicago. Like I'm curious about that.
I will upload it to our shorts because I'm gonna shoot it. And I'm going to be ready. It's content, man. It's content. We're monetized now, so we got to keep feeding the machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, Forbidden Doors coming up in. No, that's something different later. Sorry, it's something different later. There was All Out is in Hoffman Estates in the Now Arena, right? So
back home.
I got it mixed up. Yeah,
back home,
so.
back close to my house. I grew up 2 miles from that building, so I'm very excited
Yeah.
to see that again back home. All you guys that bitch about having to go to the suburbs for that, fuck y'all.
I think Tony Wisely is not going back to the United Center probably anytime soon now that Punk is gone. Yeah, but you know what? But you know, Chicago is an AEW town, kind of. So they have a deep history there. They started there essentially, so it's like they should go back. But the Now Arena is kind of like, you know, synonymous with them, and they can't draw enough to book the big arena, so book the smaller one. It makes sense.
Yeah, and then they'll pack. It'll be great, dude. New Japan's got 6,000 tomorrow. I think 6,000 plus in Wintrust, which is the one that they usually run Dynamite at. Now AEW runs 3 different buildings in Chicago, so
yeah. But Bobby Monsoon in the chat. New Japan, it comes on when is it? Saturday?
Saturday. It's tomorrow night. It's Friday night.
Friday night. Yeah, it comes on tomorrow night. But all right, guys. So I see everybody in the chat. I will get to you. Like I said, if you guys want to interrupt me, that's fine. Just drop a $2 bill, help a brother out to help support the show. Or if you really want to support the show, head to patreon.com/the Mike and JD show, where all of our premium content, and then you can join us for They Live on Sunday nights. Also, Brace for Impact. You get, you know, early and ad free and unedited access to that. And then JD is going to be dropping some stuff here pretty soon too. So I want to get this plugs out of the way before I get into this Akebono story. So before I tell the story, rest in peace, Akebono. His name's Chad Rowan, I believe. The last name is Rowan. He's from right here in Hawaii. So this is actually a big story here locally. In fact, I actually took my kid to the kids museum down in I think it's in Waikiki, and they actually have like a little bit of a monument to him in there. They have like his footprints on the ground and say Akebono, and they have like a big picture of him. And so like my kid would go and stand in his footprints. She doesn't know the story. She's probably gonna find out one day. So she would stand in his footprints, and it kind of like shows the history of him being like the first. I don't know if he's the only ever, but like the first American-born like Yokozuna sumo champion in
first
sumo history.
I think the first.
I think the first. So he died at the age of 54. Not only was he like one of the great sumo wrestlers of all time, super famous in Japan, which I found out later. Super famous in Japan. He also was an MMA fighter and a pro wrestler. And apparently he is a keg stand brawler, which I ended up finding out a little bit. So here's the story, and I've told this a couple times over on our old channel on Fight Game Media. So some of you guys, if you've heard the story before, feel free to skip ahead a little bit because we still have some more stuff to talk about. But so I want to say it was like 2006, 2007 timeframe. My supervisor, and I'm not gonna say his name because he's still active in the military. My supervisor at the time, he had gotten a DUI. And so his license had gotten suspended for like, I think it was like 6-9 months, something like that. So he couldn't drive. So my ass was driving him everywhere. I had to go pick him up for work. Like I was like his chauffeur basically. And so whenever he got his license back, whenever the suspension was lifted, I decided to throw him a keg party. Okay, that was my first mistake. It's like, because like, you don't like, that's not how you celebrate getting your license back. But I was like 23 at the time and he was like 25. So let's just say we were pretty stupid. Okay.
Kids.
Yeah. We're essentially young kids in the military stationed overseas away from our family. We're not making the best choices. Right. So I think it was like a Saturday, like I said, 06, 07 timeframe. And I just remember I go to the gas station and I get the keg, and I didn't have a way to actually get it to the place where I was supposed to take it, because it just wouldn't fit in my little car. I had a little Toyota Celica. I had no like, and there was like stuff in the trunk I couldn't. So they just give me a dolly, and like, so I'm wheeling it down the road in a dolly, and like a cop pulls up, like one of the security forces members. I think she was like a tech sergeant or something like that, and she just like rolls down her window. She's like, "You guys are gonna be good, right?" And I go, "Oh yes, ma'am. No worries. No, like it's gonna be a great night. Don't worry about it." And so we ended up wheeling it down there. And we started like early in the day, probably like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And, you know, we're drinking beers. People brought liquor. We were barbecuing. We had all kinds of stuff going on. We're playing beer pong. And as people would kind of come by the place where we're partying, because it was a part of like our apartment complex, I was inviting people to come over, like just random strangers, like people I just didn't even know. because I had that reputation. I was just that kind of guy. So I'm inviting people over. People stop by, they'd play a game of beer pong, or they'd take a drink or a shot with us, and they'd just be on their way. We had poker tables set up. We had all kinds of stuff. It was a great party, right? In fact, Roger, I'm going to send him this clip. My friend Roger, I think, took a lot of people's money that night because he's very good at poker. So anyway, hours go by, and at one point, I'm probably 24, 25 beers deep. And I should preface that by saying I haven't had a drink in like 10 years. So actually more than 10 years. So, and this story is one of the many reasons why I don't drink anymore. So I'm like, 24, 25 beers deep, probably a couple of shots as well. Chances are, knowing me. And I see this group of guys, all island boys. So Filipino, Chamorros from Guam, Hawaiian, Samoans, Tongans, like just all kind of the island boys kind of stuck together over there in Japan. And Akebono, and I didn't recognize him at the time, but Akebono spent a lot of time on base, and he would hang out with all the young airmen and all the young NCOs that were from the islands, because he's from Hawaii. And that was kind of like customary. He was kind of like their uncle, kind of. And his wife worked on base, so he had base access, so he can kind of come and go as he pleases because his wife was able to sign him onto base. It was fine. So he would come and he would hang out a lot. He would actually come to like a lot of events around the base, and he was very nice to everybody. I even heard like later when I told the story, like, you mean Chad, the guy that buys everybody like Burger King at the baseball games? Like, oh yeah, that guy. So anyway, so he's with him. I don't recognize him at this point. He's with him, and then like there's a bunch of the island boys. And I remember telling my friend Thibodeau, I was like, hey, I'm going to go invite those guys over, man. I recognize a couple of those guys from the gym. And he was like, Mike, those guys don't want to talk to you. I was like, no, everybody fucking loves me. Second mistake. So I then walk up to them, and I'm drunk as shit. But in my head, I'm being eloquent and professional and just super nice, and everybody loves me. I walk up there, and I go to invite them to come over to the keg. To the cake party, and one of his guys pie faces me, just puts his hand in my face and shoves me. And then he goes behind his friends, right? There's like 8, 9 of them, right? He goes behind his friends and like starts like bowing up and flexing on me, saying, what are you going to do about it? And so, like, me being me, I charged after him, right? And I start to go after this guy, and like they're holding me back. What I didn't know then that I knew later was that was the cue for them to jump me. But they didn't jump me, thank God. I guess I'm still breathing. They didn't jump me. They were just trying to diffuse the situation, but I wasn't having it because somebody put their fucking hands on me, and I can't stand that, right? And so I go after this guy, and like big altercation ensues. My friends jump in. There's like a bunch of pushing and shoving. I don't think punches were being thrown at this point. And like they're to diffuse it. Here comes the biggest motherfucker I've ever seen, and he's like, "Hey, everybody, get back, get back, get back!" And but I still see this guy over there talking shit. And I got this big guy in front of me, and I'm like trying to get past him, and he's like holding me back. Now, in this situation, from what I can gather, from what I'm being told later in life, I might have commented on the man's weight. In fact, I think one of the quotes is, so what are you going to do about it, you fat motherfucker? And I was like, I'll kick your fucking ass. Now I'm going to kick his ass, and I'm going to kick all their asses. He didn't like that part. And so I got people, and he's not trying to hurt me, right? And so he's like pushing me back, and like, fuck you. And I'm calling him fat. I'm saying whatever I can say to get into this guy's skin, is I want to go get his friend that's hiding behind him like a coward, right? To this day, I still got heat with that guy. I don't know who he is, but if I saw him and I recognized him, it might be on sight, even though I'm fucking old and brittle now. But so I said enough to set the guy off, and I have my friends behind me, and I have my ex-wife behind me, and Akebono just shoves me back, and he just and I go flying, right? So does my ex-wife, and she goes flying. She hits her fucking head on the concrete, right? And she's passed out. But I didn't notice because I'm more worried about what's going on over there. And then all of a sudden the cops show up, and you would think that the cops showing up would get me to defuse the situation, and it actually got me more pissed off, and I'm still going after this guy. And like, so finally one of the cops, who happens to be a friend of mine, her name was Malu. We and her actually talked about this situation like 10 years later. Like we're having some, it was probably like 6-7 years later, but we were having dinner one night at Travis Air Force Base. And we talked about it, just joking about it. But she was like holding me back. She's from Tonga. She's like holding me back. She's like, Mike, shut the fuck up. Get over here. And it's like, she's holding me. A lot of people are holding me. The cops, they get him to calm down. They calm him down. He's too big to fit in the back of the cop car. So they actually have him get inside it. He was in an Escalade. He gets inside of his Escalade, and his wife has to drive him to the police station. And he's getting fingerprinted, all this and that. Well, the ambulance show up, and I'm like, why the fuck is the ambulance here? Oh, another friend of mine was like, hey, your wife got knocked out. I was like, who the fuck knocked her out? And they said Akebono, or him, the big guy, knocked her out. So then I go after him again. And the cops are holding me back. Everybody's holding me back. Ambulance shows up. I get in the ambulance with my ex-wife. And then we get over to the ER, and I'm all charged up. I'm cutting promos the whole time. We get to the hospital, and they check her out. She's fine. She actually didn't even have that much to drink, and I think she was probably over exaggerating, which I was kind of a typical thing in our marriage, to be honest with you. So sorry.
We don't need that.
Yeah, we don't need that. So anyway, we get there, and one of the cops comes in, and he wants me to do a breathalyzer test, and I'm like, okay. So I was like, but I wasn't driving. They go, yeah, we just want to know how drunk you are. I said, okay. And they actually put this on the form. I blew a 0.24.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, a 0.24, and they're like, damn it. And then like Malu comes in and she goes, Mike, you blew a 0.24. I'm like, fuck yeah, I did. I'm like kind of proud of it. And then she goes, do you know who that was? And I was like, who what? She goes, the big guy. Do you know who that was? And I was like, no, who the fuck is he? I want to kick his ass. Tell me where he's at, like that kind of stuff. And she goes, that was Akebono. I was like, the guy from WrestleMania? And she goes, because he'd wrestled Big Show a couple years before that. And she goes, yeah, Akebono, the sumo wrestler. You just tried to fight Akebono. And then I got like random people, 6'9", 500 pounds.
Yeah, 500 pounds. Yeah. A monster.
Yeah. He gets bigger every time I tell the story, actually, and I get tougher every time. So again, this story is half from my perspective and half from what my drunk friends told me later. So I would say it's probably like 75% true. But if we end up getting like the security footage, it might be like half true. I have no idea. I'm just telling you from my perspective. So I got medics coming in and everything. And I'm like, oh shit. Akebono's like, he's like super famous, right? She goes, he's like one of the most famous people in Japan. I was like, oh shit. And so anyway, we leave the hospital because my ex-wife's fine. We get back to the apartment. The next day the cops show up to my apartment. And they go, hey, Mr. Gilbert, we just want to take your statement. And I was like, look, here's my statement. It was just a drunk argument. I don't want to fight that guy. I don't want any issues. And I definitely don't want him to go to jail. It was just pushing and shoving. Nobody got hurt. It's all good for me. And they go, are you sure? I was like, yes, all good on this end. I don't want it. No charges, no nothing, no big deal. And they go, okay, well then that ends up being the statement. A couple days later, or a couple days later at the gym, I recognize one of the guys from the altercation and go, dude, what the fuck happened? And he looks at me. He's like, oh, hey, yeah, sorry about that. I was like, what happened? Like, what did I do? Why did that guy shove me? He goes, we don't like people approaching us. I was just like, I was inviting you to have a drink. And he goes, well, yeah, but we were also drinking. We had been at the club for hours and we were all drunk. And then we just saw some guy walking up to us. That guy didn't know you and he just shoved you. And I was just like, what the fuck crawled up his ass? He's like, he's fine. Don't worry about it. I was like, okay. I was like, well, hey, tell the big guy, tell Akebono that like, I told the cops I don't want to press charges on him. He should be fine from now. But I told everybody like, leave the guy alone. He goes, okay, well, I'll tell Chad that. No, no problem. And then me and him shook hands. We squashed it. Well, I don't see Akebono again for a while after that. And like 6 months goes by and I'm at the pool one day and there's all of them, every single one of them. And I'm like, and I could see them from the fence. And I'm like, well, this could go a lot of ways, but it's like early in the day, nobody's drinking. And I just walk up and I have my towel and I'm just going to go over and I walk right past all of them. So it's like, they're either going to kick my ass or they're going to leave me alone, but we're about to find out. I looked over at him. He looked back at me. I gave him a nod like that. He nodded back and we squashed it at that moment. That was the end of it. So nothing ever came of it. It never hit the press because it never left the base. It didn't. I think we have a thing called the blotter. So I think it did reach the blotter, but it never like reached the newspapers or anything like that. Because if it did, a lot of people, I probably would have been in some shit. He would have been in some shit. But I was like, no, let's just fucking squash this right now. I'm not going to talk about this thing until I'm at a party or I'm on a podcast. So here we are.
It's my third time hearing that story, and it gets better every single time. Because again, when I heard that, the first thing I hear Akebono dies, the first thing I'm always going to think of is Mike almost fought that guy. And
Yeah.
but he could have killed Mike.
he could have. Yeah. Cause I was pretty full of myself because I was training, like, I was doing jujitsu and wrestling and some kickboxing at the time. I wasn't any good, but I was like doing it. And so I was like, kind of full. I was like, I could probably handle myself, but honestly, they all probably could have killed me, especially him. Like just one shot from him would have probably knocked my whole block off.
Here's the thing. Akebono was Yokozuna. He was the champion. He was the grand champion, the world heavyweight champion of sumo. So at a time, he was literally the greatest sumo wrestler on the planet. He'd have slapped the shit out of you.
He died at 54. So this was almost 20 years ago. He was in his like late 30s at the time. Man. So still relatively like young guy. He's younger. He was younger then than I am now, basically. Yeah. So it would. I remember telling my commander on like that Monday morning because my supervisor was like, "Hey, we gotta go tell the boss." Like, oh shit, okay. So we go tell him, and he goes, "Well, did you swing at him?" And I was just like, no, sir. I just said a lot of mean words to him." And he goes, "And you're still here, huh?" It's like, "Yes, sir." He goes, "All right, well." He's like, maybe you don't need to be doing keg parties anymore. And I was like, I think that's a good idea, boss. And like, nothing ever came of it. It was awesome. Like, and the crazy thing is, and I told my first sergeant, and he just laughed his ass off. And I'm just like, I wish I had like airmen like me right now. I would deserve that because the airmen I got were like more dramatic now. I want like idiots like me because I was a total idiot. But I wasn't like a nefarious or a bad person. I was just a moron that was like partying too much, you know what I mean, and getting into stupid altercations.
Dude, I mean, that's part of, I hate to say this, but it's part of growing up is making mistakes like that. And especially in your 20s, like, you mess up, you do stupid shit. Not all of us try to fight Akebono, but we all have, I think there's, I ain't going to share any, if the moment comes up, I'll share some of my own stories someday. But I ain't never tried to fight Akebono, man. That's a hell of a story. It's every time I hear the name Akebono, I always think of you. And I was sad. Well, I was sad when I heard that. And again, I mean, I'm glad you told the story again.
Yeah, me too, because I'm kind of always going to be kind of like connected to him a little bit, like, or he's always going to be like, me and him will always be kind of connected. And I know he died with dementia and he didn't really have any memory of it. I bet that wasn't even like that big of a deal to him. Like afterwards, that's probably like, there's probably been like 100 other people that probably squared up on him because a lot of people would get drunk and they like to square up on the big guy. Right. So it probably didn't even like mean anything to him. But to me, it's like that's like a big story. And in fact, like after that, like I'd be walking around the base like, oh shit, that's the guy that tried to fight Akebono. Like that's the idiot. Right. And so like I kind of like I had that like a little bit of that reputation. And I carried that with me for a while because the Air Force is small and like I would go, my next base was in Las Vegas and there were people that I was stationed with in Japan that were in Las Vegas. And then like in Travis Air Force Base after that, I was, people that I was stationed with. So, and then the story spreads and like, it just gets bigger and bigger and worse. And like, and depending on who tells the story, like for me, I'm more of a badass, but other people tell the story like he's a bigger idiot. Right. So it's just one of those things, man. But I was pretty upset when I heard that he had died. Because I'm always going to kind of like be connected with him a little bit. People love that story too. And I like telling it.
I love it. It's a very much a Rashomon story. Like, everyone's got a different version of it. Much like the CM Punk footage last night. You see what you want to see.
And it was very appropriate to tell the story because it was like a whole to-do about some shoving and stuff like that kind of took on a life of its own. Kind of like with the All In thing,
But that's most fights. Like, you watch TV and most, like, we're going to watch They Live this weekend. And that is the greatest fight in cinematic history. Keith David, Roddy Piper, amazing fight scene. That doesn't happen in real life. Most real life fights involve some punching or some pushing, a couple punches here and there, and a lot of yelling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine all involve double legs because I wrestle. So, but I mean, like meathead stuff. It happens. It's part of growing up. Great story though. Absolutely great.
Yeah, he was 6'9" and 500 pounds. I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof because I was having like 25 beers in my system. So, all right, guys, thank you for sticking around for the story. Let's go ahead and get to the chat a little bit. I want to talk to some of you guys. Let's see. King of the North said, "I cannot believe Mike put Akebono in a chokehold."
He waited. To be fair, he waited till he pushed back his hair. Then Mike did it.
Yeah. TGV says, as for Ospreay, good for him shooting back at Paul. Also, Paul's an asshole who is insecure with all the Triple H era crap.
Yeah.
I think, look, a lot of famous people are very insecure, especially bodybuilders. And Triple H is a bodybuilder. They're very vain people. He is absolutely like super insecure, but he is not alone in that. But I think that is a good description of him.
A lot of famous people are. That's why they're famous.
Yeah. Izzy McClure, I'm excited to watch They Live. Right, you better be there, brother. I hope you are. And then King of the North, Chris Hero with an all-time holy shit, I'm not gonna have my job anymore reaction, or his reaction was kind of like my reaction to watching one of Rachel Ellering's promos in Impact. So just kind of like what the fuck did I just watch?
Nice. Yeah. You guys know that I believe we're both still blocked from Chris Hero because we made fun of Rachel Ellering's terrible promo on A Brace for Impact back when we had like 10 listeners too. Like when we first started the show, like nobody was listening to us at first. And then but Chris Hero and Rachel Ellering, they sure heard what we had to say about her terrible promo.
They got wind. Punk was right about assaulting a coworker. That's not a good thing. Look, I don't think anybody is saying that Punk was in the right here. So maybe a couple. Yeah, but I don't think like in any place of business, you don't assault people. Look, I did say on Twitter, like the only thing they did was Punk look even more cool. Check out the people that are defending him. They like him even more now, right? And that's what I was getting at. But there's also a part of me that was like thinking, what if Jungle Boy had said, "What are you going to do about it?" The Harley race? You probably wouldn't have any teeth right now. You know what I mean? So it's like Punk was kind of brought up by those guys, right? And so like he's just an old school guy, and I kind of dig that about him. He's a bit of a wild card. He's infinitely interesting. He's very good for our YouTube channel. Like I get like he is a crazy person. He's a bit of a dick, and he and if you cross him, even though he is obviously not a good fighter, he will still fight you. He and I have a lot in common, clearly. So
CM Punk is the hero of his own story. He lives by, Joe lands up with the best. He lives by a code of ethics that he holds no one, that he does not hold himself to, but he holds everyone else to. He's CM Punk. And like I said, every time he does something stupid, our numbers go through the roof. And I'm miserable as a fan, but it's really good for our bottom line. So,
yes.
Misery loves company, I guess.
Yeah, Cole of the Legend said, I feel like Young Bucks and FTR works better without the footage. I agree. Even the Bucks just allude to it. If you're going to air the footage on your TV, why not have Jack Perry the one who drops it? Because Jack Perry kind of looked like a chump in the video. Like he didn't really come across like he was a badass. And when you're a wrestler on TV, you want to create the illusion that you can win fights, right? So I think Jack Perry's the last guy that wants that footage out. It might work to his advantage. He might get some heat off of it, but nobody thinks he's like a serious guy. But as John Muse says, most heat Perry ever got is probably going to be this weekend in New Japan, probably tomorrow night at the Wintrust. So
6,000. Here's what sucks too. There's going to be 6,000 people chanting CM Punk at a New Japan show. Like you're in New Japan, you don't want them cheering for a WWE guy, but that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, a New Japan show that AEW stars drew the house for, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to denigrate New Japan, but Naito without Moxley ain't drawing that house.
Oh, I'm there for Moxley. Moxley's winning the belt. I'm there for Moxley.
Moxley and Eddie Kingston drew that house. No offense to New Japan, but they're on their ass right now. And so maybe they draw that 6,000 in Japan, but in the States they don't draw 6,000. Not without Moxley and Kingston. And look, and I'm not saying that to be negative towards New Japan. Like they booked a show that could sell tickets. Good for them. I give them credit for that. But let's be real about what's happening. King of the North says you can't say on site when you're 62. I'm 41, dude. Come on.
62. God damn. That's mean.
Io says wild story, man. And then Big Laz says Jack Perry scapegoat t-shirt sold out and Dynamite was number 3 on cable. I think they'll be fine. Yeah, they'll be fine. Look, like they got to find a way to move on. They got to find a way to grow up a little bit.
That's the problem.
And get over it. Yeah.
That's the problem is like, they just can't let shit go. Like, just let it go. Again, we had all kind of forgotten about it at this point. I mean, Punk's going to hang on to shit because that's just what CM Punk does. Yeah. The man's never met a relationship he wasn't willing to ruin.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Cole of the Ledger says tremendous story, and 23 is your stupidest age.
Yes.
Clearly for me.
Also,
and Yeah, Io, we actually covered X-Men beginning of the show. So rewind, brother. We rewind. We covered X-Men in the beginning of the show, but we loved X-Men 97. All right, JD, I want to play a game with you
Oh,
really quick.
sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So I can't play the actual footage because I don't want us to get in trouble. Okay. But this is going to be called Is It AEW or Is It Porn? Are you ready to play this game?
Oh God. Yeah, I guess.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do a share screen here. All right. Nobody in the chat spoil it. JD's got a guess, okay?
Mercedes Monet left laying and
Okay, JD. What say you, JD?
Oh, that's porn.
Incorrect.
Oh man. Are you sure?
Hey, that was Mercedes Monet's acting.
Oh. Porn level. All right. Are we just gonna say this now? Mercedes Monet is a terrible promo. It's
Yeah.
terrible. So and you can't sit there and tell me that, well, AEW set her up to fail. They hired her pet writer.
yes. They got her personal writer. And like this is the stuff she's doing. It's like, and they're going against what she's not good at. They're not setting her up for success.
Well, her ankle must be fucked up for her not to be working until May. And now we have to do blackout beatdowns. Like she's still got to be rehabbing that thing pretty bad. Like she's not a good promo. Someone's like, well, they're gonna be heel soon. Yeah, they're gonna have to turn her heel because she's unlikable. And they put her with, but I think that's been the plan because she's been against Willow the whole time, and Willow's the most likable person in the company, male or female. So, and Mercedes just works better as a heel. I thought she came off very condescending last night and very phony, but her performance was also very phony. So maybe I'm just reading into that a little bit too much.
You can tell she's very clearly acting, right? And you get some of that with pro wrestling, but I thought this was worse than most. It was like nails on a chalkboard to me, like her talking to Alex Marvez.
That's why she has no lines in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, that's why she's in silent films, or she has silent roles in TV shows.
Yeah, it's not good. She's not good at this aspect. She's a great worker where she was before the ankle injury, and we'll see where we're at. And I get it. I get the signing her. You had to sign her. They did everything. They've done everything to make her happy, right? She's got her own person doing her own stuff. I don't think this is well, Tony's put her in this position. I think this is kind of what she wants to do. So, yeah, we gave Adam Copeland some room to grow, and he's wound up becoming one of my favorite performers in the company at the moment. So I think I've got to give her a little leeway. Early returns, not good.
Not good. Real quick, King of the North sent me a DM the other day. I just want to share this. He wants to submit.
You're sharing DMs? That's mean.
A picture he sent me. Oh. This is from one. Hold on, I got to go back. From one Corey Brennan. So Drain Bamager is a hardcore AEW fan that tweets positivity about AEW all day, every day, and anything that's connected to any other promotion. He somehow tries to spin it into positive AEW stuff. That's what he is, right? So if you're going after him, stop, okay? But this guy Corey Brennan of Fightful, I think he used to be part of Body Slam. He said, "Oh fucking brother, can you say one positive thing about WWE?" Now I can. If they do something I like, I say it. If they do something I don't like, I don't say it, or I say it. No, I don't really care one way or the other. But you don't get mad at people because they don't like it and they're not wanting to say anything positive about WWE. Especially don't go to somebody who's clearly his gimmick is to be positive about AEW. You're why would you pick that fight? There's something wrong with you if you're doing that. You know what I mean?
Well, he works for Fightful. That's I'm done at that point. I have nothing good to say about that network. Yeah, why? That's like calling out Gareth. WWE Gareth and being how come you don't say, or Cheese Boy, what's his name? Oh, Julian Weeks. Yeah.
Julian Weeks or Cheeseboard Alfred, who's clearly playing a gimmick. Oh, you know what? The worst thing that Tony Khan ever did, right, with this all-in footage, is he made me laugh at a joke that Alfred did, and I am embarrassed.
Oh no!
I'm embarrassed, but it got shared around. I didn't know, and then I saw his name at the bottom. Damn it! I laughed at that. That's so embarrassing. So in his write-up of he in his write-up of the AEW show, he wrote in the results, like one of the results was CM Punk defeating Jungle Boy, and he just put in parentheses backstage all in footage. I was like, damn it, that's actually funny. God, it got me. It's like, and then I saw it was him. I was like, oh no, I can't admit that made me laugh.
It's like that meme that goes, the worst person you know just made a point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much what it
Yeah.
is. Hey man, that's actually not a bad joke. So
Yeah.
I gotta
Not a bad joke. All right, guys, we're coming up on the 60 minutes. Real quick. Miyu Yamashita is making her way back to TNA, and she'll be part of the tapings in Las Vegas on April 21st. I'll have more coverage of that coming up this weekend on Brace for Impact. Also, Natalia and Jordan Grace continue to tease having a match together. This is in light of Nick Khan discussing his interest in working with other companies and reports of TNA and WWE having a meeting over the weekend. JD, what do you think about TNA and WWE? Kind of like, how do you see that going?
I see me not caring.
Yeah.
I see it not being good for TNA because it never is. Why don't you ask Gabe Sapolsky how that went with Evolve?
Well, it didn't go good for Evolve, but it's gone good for Gabe. He's got a job.
He does have a
Same
job.
thing-
He's been fired.
Same thing
Does
with
he
Paul
have a
Heyman.
job? Does he have a job currently?
He got
He's
he
lost
got
it a
fired and
couple-
got brought back.
He
He
got
got
back?
fired and got brought back. Yeah, he got brought back. Yeah.
So I mean, like,
When Triple
Hey.
H took over, he brought Gabe back. So
if people are looking to jump ship and find a place to land, it's really good, I guess. If you want to keep your promotion running, it's not great. It's not a good
Yeah.
track record of companies. Ask Jim Cornette how it went with Smoky Mountain.
ask
Ask
ECW.
ECW. Ask the Jarretts. Like the people in charge wind up having a soft cushion landing spot, but the promotions not as much.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm nervous about it, but I do think that we could probably see. I've been waiting to see somebody from WWE show up on TNA. We'll see if it ever happens. So probably not.
That would be spread.
Matt Hardy, officially a free agent. He's let AEW know that he will not be accepting their offer. Is it possible that AEW never actually gave him an offer and he is just making this whole thing up and he just like a free agent?
Are you calling Matt Hardy a carny?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm calling Matt Hardy.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't think he goes back to WWE, but like TNA, right? I mean,
Sure.
or NWA probably, something like that.
I mean, Matt should just, honest to God, the last couple of years of watching him wrestle have not been good. I like Matt Hardy. I'm a fan of Matt Hardy. Broken Matt brought me back to TNA, and I enjoyed that whole bit of lunacy because at the time it was different. We weren't getting a ton of meme wrestling in 2016, right? Matt Hardy kind of made that popular. So that was fun at the time. But his body's really broken down, and he doesn't look great when he wrestles, and it's, I don't know, maybe time to move on to the next phase. My opinion, I'm sure he's not going to do that. Whatever.
Yeah. I figured TNA because he could do his broken thing, and I think he never wanted to give up on that character, and I think that's probably the only company that'll let him do it, to be honest with you. I don't think any other company's going to let him. So.
The broken thing they tried, and WWE made it the woken thing, and they didn't quite let him do it all the way. And then AEW, they brought him into AEW in the first week during a pandemic, mind you. Week 1 of the pandemic, they brought him in, and it got shit on by the fan base really bad. So he never really got to do that.
Well, they brought in a guy who can teleport into their television show that was based on sports-based programming, right? Because they were supposed to present themselves as the alternative to WWE and the alternative to TNA, right? Like they were like a little bit of anti, like old, like they weren't going to make the mistakes that TNA made. So, and then they brought him in, and the first thing he does is teleport. We're just like, okay, so
yep,
yeah,
didn't quite work.
Didn't quite work. Sheamus is returning to WWE after taking 7 months off. No word if he's resigned, but people are looking into that. And then WWE World Heavyweight Champion Damian Priest has resigned with WWE. Congrats to him. New contract, new title, and on a new girl. Pictures are everywhere. I don't think it's been reported yet, but yeah, likes Russians, I guess.
Who's this new girl? I haven't seen. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh. She got redeemed.
Yeah. So there you go, man. We have so much more we could talk about, but we've already kind of gone over our time. So I know it's really late where you're at. So we'll call it a day on this.
Dude, I'm sorry. Everyone in the world is going to cover all the stuff that we're going to cover, right?
Yeah.
No one is going to be able to tell the Mike Bono the Mike Akebono story. The Mike Akebono story. That is what makes our show different. That is what makes us unique. And it is stuff like that. And I am, I've heard it 3 times, and I enjoy it every time I hear it. I hope to hear it again someday because Akebono is going to keep getting larger. It'll be 7'2" down the line. Cannot wait for that to happen.
Yeah. Undefeated MMA fighter, and I whooped his ass. Basically, is how the story is going to be told in like 5 years. It's like the older I get, the more badass my stories get. So. All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you to everybody in the chat. I really do appreciate you guys being here with us. And for all the people watching online, both on Voices of Wrestling and on the Mike and JD show, I think we had over 50 viewers at one point. So thank you guys for joining us. The flagship's not on tonight, so we get a little bit of a bump for the flagship not going live tonight, I think. So that's cool. Thanks, guys, for taking the night off. I appreciate that. That helps us out. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. Go to patreon.com/the Mike and JD show. Brace for Impact coming out this week. Got all kinds of stuff to talk about. It's going to be a big, big show, and I'll do that on Saturday morning. But until next time, mahalo.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A-game. Made no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This is an A-game, better bring your A-game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A-game. Made no rain from the track when we...
Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the co-hosts of Jumping Bomb Audio, the #1 show all about the world of Joshi Pro Wrestling. Episodes drop every other Monday, where we discuss the biggest Joshi news, review shows, and preview the hottest upcoming Joshi action.
So whether you're a new fan or an old fan, we've got something here for you at Jumping Bomb Audio.
Check us out on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.